Good evening, friends. I join you from Kochi and I'm indeed happy to be among you tonight. The topic on which I'm going to entertain you for the next 10 minutes is about the joys of daydreaming. Tell me something, how many of you daydream even though you are adults? I guess we all do find that it gives us immense pleasure to slip into a world of dreams and fantasies every now and then, leaving behind the harsh realities of life, doesn't it? At least to me it does, and I have no qualms about admitting it. I am planning to give you an account of my daydreams over the years, and I hope it brings a smile to your faces. I'll begin with my fourth grade. Till the time I was in my fourth grade, I studied in a convent school in Chennai, the erstwhile Madras. Those days, our family used to live as two separate establishments. Myself, my mother, and my baby sister used to live in Chennai, whereas my father used to live in New Delhi. Both my parents were government servants, but unfortunately, my father was employed by the central government, whereas my mother was employed by the state government, and they used to find it very difficult to get postings in the same location so that we could all live together. This meant that we followed a procedure of two separate establishments for a couple of years. The idea being, this would provide my mother enough opportunity to put in service so that she could avail the long term loss of pay leave facility available for employees those days. Once she could avail the long term loss of pay leave facility, we could all move over to New Delhi and join my father there. During those 2 years, my mother used to take me to a number of old Tamil movies. These were the movies in which the doyens of yesteryear's cinema, Sivaji Ganesan and MGR, used to act as heroes. And Sivaji and MGR would perform some astounding feats of courage, chivalry, and daring in these movies. And they would. And in my daydreams, I used to be just like Sivaji and MGR, a do-gooder He-Man hero for whom fighting with 10 burly men was child's play. I used to do everything that Sivaji and MGR did, sprinkled liberally with bits and pieces from my imagination. I used to jump off low-flying helicopters onto the roofs of fast-moving trains, trains moving at 80 kilometers per hour, slide down the side of the train, jump through an open door and fight 10 to 15 burly men, and finally I would rescue a beautiful damsel in distress. The lady in question would immediately fall in love with me, and she would hug me and kiss me and tell me how much she loved me and inquire about my well being with tears in her eyes. This used to be one of my pet daydreams. The heroines in these movies were played my favorites of Tamil cinema, favorite heroines of Tamil cinema those days. These were either the lovely Vanisri or Lata. And the villain always used to be Nambiyar, whom I used to hate, and I enjoyed punching him in the face in my daydreams. There is one particular scene in a movie called Yen Magan, meaning my son, which captured my fancy so much that almost for 6 months I played this scene and enacted this scene in my mind's eye. In this movie, Sivaji would play the role of a Robin Hood style thief who used to loot from the rich and hand over all the wealth to the poor. In the scene I am talking about, Sivaji would chase a fast moving train in a horse and he would jump into a compartment through a conveniently opened door and he would fight 10 to 15 burly men and steal a bag of diamonds and jump back onto the saddle of the horse, which is again conveniently moving along the train, and escape. I used to enact this scene umpteen number of times in my mind's eye. And there used to be a small twist in the plot also. In addition to getting away with a bag of diamonds, I would also rescue the girl who used to live next door to my house in Chennai and whom I had sworn to marry once I reached adulthood. After that, I reached my fifth grade and our family moved over to New Delhi to join my father. And then I started watching Hindi movies, mostly Amitabh Bachchan's movies. I watched Zanjeer, which was the first movie of Amitabh's I watched, and I became the honest, incorruptible police officer who would fight a crime syndicate single handedly. The reigning queens of Bollywood cinema those days were Hema Malini, Rekha, Parveen Bobby, and Zinat Aman and Jaya Badri. And I used to romance all these women in my daydreams, and they used to go gaga over me. And with the larger the number of Amitabh's movies I watched, the taller I grew. I was 6 foot 4 inch tall and with a lanky frame, and I was an expert in jujitsu and karate and judo, and I would pile up the bodies of villains like anything. I was simply magnificent, you see. Then I reached my 6th or 7th grade, and I stepped into the shoes of the heroes of the books I read. The first author I read was Enid Blyton. And the first series of Enid Blyton that I read was the Five Findouters series. In this series, the Five Findouters were just a group of children who used to solve petty crimes that occurred in their village, Peterswood. These were generally the small thefts like the loss of a necklace or a cat that disappears or something like that. And they were always in competition with the village policeman Goon, who wanted to solve the crimes earlier than the children and who always used to fail. Now, the head of the Five Findouters was a boy by the name of Frederick Algernon Trotterville, a 13-year-old chubby boy whose name was shortened to Fatty by the other members of the Five Findouters. And he used to be the brains behind the Five Findouters. He could solve any crime. He was fantastic. And in my daydreams, I became Fatty. I would be solving crimes, and I would be assisting the local police in my city, and and Fatty's crimes. Fatty used to solve simple thefts like disappearance of cats and necklaces and so on. I was way above. I used to attend only to multiple murders and serial killings, and the local police were always at me for assistance. After that, I moved over to a series called the Hardy Boys series. And in the Hardy Boys series, the heroes were two brothers by the name of Joe Hardy and Frank Hardy. Joe Hardy's girlfriend was Iola Morton, and Frank Hardy's girlfriend was Callie Shaw. The Hardy Boys books used to depict these two lovely ladies on the covers sometimes, and I always found that Iola Morton was prettier than Callie Shaw, at least in my eyes. And can you tell me whose shoes I would step into in my daydreams? Naturally, I would be Joe Hardy in my daydreams because Iola Morton was Joe Hardy's girlfriend. After that, I moved over to the Earl Stanley Gardner novels written by an author called Earl Stanley Gardner. And I would become Perry Mason, the tall, shrewd, and handsome attorney, arguing brilliantly in court, always defending a beautiful, innocent young woman charged with murder. I used to be just like Perry Mason, a brilliant and a real genius in law, and I would make mincemeat of the district attorney Hamilton Berger's arguments in court. Perry Mason also had a beautiful secretary by the name of Della Street. And the role of Della Street in my daydreams was played by my school days crush, a girl in my school class who was extremely beautiful. You see, the thing about all these women whom I used to dream about or who played a role in my daydreams would be they would all be beautiful. That was something indispensable for me. After that, I moved over to Robert Ludlum's, and guess whose role I occupied in my daydreams? It was Jason Bourne. I guess most of you have watched some of these Jason Bourne movies, like the Bourne Ultimatum and the Bourne Supremacy and so on. I used to be Jason Bourne, and I used to fight Carlos the terrorist. In Jason Bourne's books, it was Carlos the terrorist who was the villain. And I used to make mincemeat of Carlos. I was simply fantastic. But by this time, I had reached my 16th or 17th year, and I was brought down to reality with a bump. I no longer had daydreams of this kind where I would be Shivaji Ganesan or MGR or Jason Bourne. My daydreams became more realistic, grounded in reality. I had lost my innocence by that stage. I was only dreaming about stuff like getting through the IIT joint entrance examination and getting good marks on the boards and getting into a good engineering college and so on and so forth. It is indeed a pity that at some point in our growth cycle we lose our innocence, but I guess it is an important part of growing up. We no longer at that is the stage when we no longer believe that it is indeed Santa Claus who brings the Christmas, who gets us the Christmas gifts on Christmas Day and places them by the side of the Christmas tree. Nor do we believe in the fantastic tales of Ramayana or Mahabharata. I find that indeed something very regrettable. All children lose their innocence at some point, and I guess most of us must have watched this happening with our own kids also. But believe me, even now, when I'm traveling in a car in a steep mountain road, or I'm in a beautiful rose garden, or when I'm in the seashore and watching the deep blue sea, the child in me just peeps out, and I do give my imagination a free rein and daydream like anything. You also try it once in a while. It is indeed a very pleasurable activity. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you so much.